So yeah, I'd like to mix things up a little bit and just take a few minutes to talk to you guys about a topic that is really important to me, and it's been on my mind a lot lately, and I hope it's something that many of you are already thinking about, and maybe this is the beginning of a conversation. So this is sort of a very large topic. We only have a few minutes. I certainly don't want to stand in between everyone and dinner or the next venue or anything, but I'm just going to sort of give you some scenarios to consider and some questions to think about. So I'm Lane. You guys have seen a lot of me today. I'm an independent Ethereum core developer, but I care a great deal about people, just all kinds of people. And so I think a lot about who we're building things for, what we're building things for. So towards a humanist blockchain future. Let's see if this decides to work. Awesome. This is Marina. She is 32 years old. She's a single mother, and she lives in Atlanta, Georgia, with 2 small children. When her first child was born 10 years ago, she dropped out of college to take care of her first child. Since then, she's worked a series of odd jobs to support the family. A couple of years ago, she enrolled in some nursing courses offered by Amazon University. If you guys haven't heard about Amazon University, these are sort of slightly futuristic scenarios, so it's not really a thing, but just kind of imagine near future. Amazon University is a subsidiary of the e-commerce giant that we all know and love. And Marina graduated just recently with a degree in nursing issued on the Amazon Healthcare Cloud, which means that her degree is valid at all the institutions that participate in the Amazon Healthcare Cloud. She is really happy that her career and education are back on track, and she's very grateful to Amazon for making that experience seamless. This is Rodrigo. Rodrigo is a 45-year-old taxi driver in Mexico City. Rodrigo has spent his entire life driving taxis, and he has no clue what he would do if he couldn't continue to drive taxis. A couple of years ago, the city's taxi cartels collapsed because of increased competition from Uber. And initially, Rodrigo lost his job and was very frustrated, and he joined some protests against Uber for some time. But after a few months out of work, he couldn't support himself any longer, and eventually he caved in, and he signed up to be a driver with a new Uber service called Uber Direct, which has the benefit of allowing the drivers to keep the majority of their fees, so 95% compared to the usual 65 to 70% that Uber drivers keep. If you kind of push him hard, he will admit that he's frustrated, that he works for an American company, and he misses the days when he and his friends used to divide the cash at the end of the day that they collected driving taxis for the taxi cartel. But he barely notices the software, and things haven't changed that much, and he says he's pretty happy with the new situation. This is Wenjing. Wenjing is a 21-year-old university student in Shenzhen, China. She has a knack for math, and she scored high enough on the college entrance exam a few years ago to secure a position at one of the most prestigious universities in her city. She hopes that when she finishes studying science and technology, that she'll be able to get a job with an energy multinational and move to a city like Singapore for work. She's applying for jobs right now, and she really likes the fact that her career history, the reviews from her boss from her part-time job, her academic transcripts going all the way back to kindergarten are all available through a government-run portal and an app, which is based on blockchain technology, but she doesn't know that. And she's really excited about what the future holds. So these stories are fictional, right? These are personas, but the idea here is they're not that fictional, right? It's sort of not hard to zoom out a little bit and imagine we're kind of 5 or 10 years in the future, and these sort of ordinary people exist in various parts of the world. And what they have in common is that blockchain technology has touched all of their lives in various ways, right? The first case, Marina, has a degree issued through a blockchain-based technology that Amazon is using. And in the second case, Rodrigo is using a service called Uber Direct, which cuts out the middleman and allows Uber to reduce their fees. And in the third case, Wenjing has her academic credentials and her work history stored on a government-controlled blockchain, okay? So they're all using blockchain technology. It's kind of invisible to them, which is a lot like how we use the internet and technologies like TCP/IP today, right? They just work and we don't think about them. But they're all a bit re-centralized, controlled by big companies or controlled by the government. The other thing they have in common is that these lives are not spectacularly wonderful lives. They're not terrible lives, right? They're just kind of normal human lives. And so the question I have for you and for all of us as builders and as designers who are building things on Ethereum and thinking about the future is, how do you feel about this type of a future? Can the things we're building be better than this? Or do they have risks that could make the situation worse than this? We're at a very, very interesting time in human history right now. We are transitioning. We're sort of in the middle of this transition from late industrial stage, industrial era, into the information era, the beginning of this new informational era. And the problems that we face today as a species, as a global community, are orders of magnitude more complex than the problems we've faced historically. My favorite example of this is climate change. There's no one person, there's no one institution, there's not even one country that can begin to address these problems together. These are things that are massive coordination challenges, and they're things that only the majority of humans on this planet can come together to solve, or not, right, and face the consequences either way. However, so that's sort of the scary side, right? We have all this sort of political instability, economic instability, but we also have this really powerful new set of tools and technologies. And I'm thinking, obviously Ethereum is a big part of it, but there's many other technologies as well that I think can be used to address these problems and unlock human capability in a way that's never happened before. So I think that's why now is the time to be having this conversation and thinking along these lines. I think that we are at a fork in the road. I think this is absolutely true of Ethereum, and I think it's true of all technologies, whether that's AI, whether it's machine learning or self-driving cars. One path forward is kind of the lazy path, and that is entrenching existing power systems, power dynamics. Okay, this is kind of the rich get richer, the wealthy, privileged populations in the world stay wealthy and privileged for the foreseeable future. And if you extrapolate based on present trends, I think that that's the path we're going to end up on. So again, I think we have great potential, but none of this is automatic. We don't get this stuff for free. The other path is a much harder path, right? And I don't know what's on that path. That's kind of the unexplored path. But we have the potential to create better, fairer, more representational, more participatory systems. And the tools like Ethereum that we have in front of us are a big part of that. And the last point I want to make here is it's not a question of ability, it's not a question of resources. We have enough resources in the world today to feed every human on the planet, to house and clothe every human. It's a question of allocation, and more than anything, it's a question of intent, right? Are we brave enough, are we strong enough to use these technologies for good? What does humanist mean to you? What does it mean to do good? This is not an easy question, and you'll probably hear this a lot. Like this weekend, I don't have any answers. As I said, this is intended to be, an inspiration for you to think for yourselves what this stuff means. This is not a religion. There's no 10 Commandments. I guess I urge you, as we go forth and build amazing things at ETH Berlin, right? Just think about your values and think about what humanism means to you, and does it matter to you, and do these people and these stories matter to you? And there are communities and particular ways of thinking about this problem that I found very helpful. One in particular is called the Effective Altruism Movement. I urge you to look it up. They've done a good job of turning altruism and humanism into something beginning to approach a science, something that we can begin to kind of quantify. And I guess the most relevant question for on all of our minds today is why Ethereum, right? Why this community? What do we have? What do we have to offer as a community? I think we have three things to offer. I think the first is the technologies themselves, the apps and infrastructure and layer 2 things that everyone in this room is building and working on and thinking about. Number 2 is what I call our superpower, and that's things like censorship resistance and permissionless innovation, which I think are what will allow these technologies to change the world. And the third is the community itself. I don't know about you guys, but the people I know who are here, who are in this room, and by the way, all of you guys are heroes for like staying to the very end today, so thank you for that. The people I know in this community are here for the right reasons, right? They're not here to make a name for themselves. They're not here to make money. Those things are nice side effects, but they're here because they have this particular set of values that we as a community share and that I think will allow us to build a better humanist future. Someone else actually suggested that I use this image today for this slide, and I like it because this is kind of Ethereum, right? We're like kids. We're little and we're running around and we're immature, but we're wearing the superhero costume and we're like, we're going to save the world. So hopefully we grow up into real superheroes. Hopefully. That's on us. And so there are organizations in this community that have thought a great deal and spoken about and shared in a very vocal way their values and their mission statements. So many of those organizations are in the room today and have been here on the stage today. So yeah, huge shout out to Giveth and Status and Aragon and DAOstack and Gitcoin for doing that, for setting a really great example and flying that flag of those values. And again, I just urge everyone in the room, as we're building cool things. Building is great, engineering is amazing, but like it has to start with values, I think, if you really want to make a difference in the world. And really, look these up. They're all really amazing documents and great starting points. And so you may be asking yourself at this point, what can I do? I'm just one person. I'm just, a small project. I'll give you 3 concrete thoughts to take with you and things that you can put into action today to begin making a difference. The first is reflecting about your own values and thinking about some of the questions. Again, these are questions I'd like you guys to take with you over the next few days and weeks and months. What does humanism mean to me? What are my values? What do I care about? Right? How important is this stuff to me? Number 2, when we're designing things and when we're building things, as builders and designers and engineers, it's super easy to just build stuff because it's cool. It's like an interesting problem to work on. Holy crap, wouldn't it be amazing if we had something that did this? But we often, in that process, tend to forget the human element. And so what I urge you guys to do, again, including at the hackathon this weekend, is to think about the people. Think about the Marinas and the Wenjings of the world and the Rodrigos. Who are you building for? And how is the stuff you're building going to impact their lives or not? And number 3 is join the conversation. So I posted a tweet a few days ago saying that I'm going to do this talk and asking people what they wanted to hear about under the heading of Humanist Blockchain Future. And I was genuinely blown away by the feedback. I did my best to collect as many as I could of the responses. So I guess what I learned from this is that this is a topic that resonates for people, and people care greatly about it, and that's really reassuring to hear. I obviously can't go through all of them, but I'll just highlight a few of the ones that really stood out to me. Manuel asked, what are the social risks of blockchain tech going mainstream, and how can we mitigate them? We make a lot of noise and we bang the drums about making the world a better place, but there are risks involved in these technologies, and so what are they? Again, not enough time to answer these questions, but starting a conversation. Adeola asks, how can we make blockchain more accessible to the most vulnerable humans? I think it would be good if we all reflect on the fact that we're in a wealthy city, in a wealthy country, in a very privileged part of the world, and as cool as a lot of the apps and dApps and infrastructure that we're building may be, it can probably have as big, if not a larger impact on the lives of some of the most vulnerable people on the planet. So again, thinking who are those people and how can we build things for all humans? Another person said, blockchains unfortunately haven't had such an impact on poor societies. If it goes mainstream, there's a risk that the gap between the rich and the poor is actually going to increase. How do we avoid this? So again, we're all optimistic, we're all excited about these technologies and about the potential for building a more inclusive, fairer, more just system. But I think if you, again, extrapolate based on present trends and you look at things like the current wealth distribution in Ethereum, we're not necessarily on that trajectory yet. We have a lot of work to do. And finally, Santiago says, blockchains tend to give priority to resources to those with the most money to spend. For example, you can pay more fees to get your transactions mined earlier over first come, first serve. How does this impact society if resources like an appointment start being offered under this new paradigm? You know, a lot of us are economists or crypto economists. We think a lot about crypto economics, and we strive, and I'm guilty of this as well, right? We strive for economic efficiency. We all want markets and to marketize things, and radical markets are really great and exciting. But I think it is a genuinely interesting question to ask if everything, you know, is offered through a market and you gain access to that, you know, by putting in money or putting in value or something. What happens to certain types of goods that may not be allocated in the most efficient way in such a system? So again, this is, I hope, the beginning of a conversation. There are some, let's call them memes, where I'd love to kind of continue the conversation with you guys. EIP0, I think you've heard mentioned once or twice today on the stage, is an initiative that several of us launched earlier this year to talk about the, we call it the philosophical side of Ethereum governance. So that's the economic side, it's the moral, ethical side, sort of the non-technical side of Ethereum-specific governance. ETH Commons is a meme that was created by a gentleman named Reese Lindmark, just professing a similar set of values and talking about this transition from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, and how we kind of help transition and co-evolve humanity in that direction, and how Ethereum has a role to play. Social scalability is a related topic that I think has great lessons for us as we look at how tools like Ethereum and blockchain can be used to grow our social systems and our social structures in a trustless fashion. And I invented this humanist blockchain hashtag, but like tweet at me on Twitter with this and we can chat. And in closing, I just want to give a massive shout out and a thank you to Reese, the guy I mentioned a moment ago, Reese Lindmark. This humanist blockchain future meme is something that he came up with, and he kindly offered to let me borrow and co-evolve in this talk. If you're interested in this topic, check out this podcast. If you're not already familiar with his work, it's called Creating a Humanist Blockchain Future. He has 48 talks, the most recent ones, interviews with Joe Lubin, with Richard Burton, whom you saw earlier today, with Ethan, who's here somewhere. Amazing, amazing, amazing content, highly recommended. And if all that's not enough, he's also writing an entire book on this topic, and I've read kind of the beginning of this book, and it's really, really powerful stuff. Cool. That's it for me. Thank you guys for all your attention today. Thanks for paying attention to this talk. I'm looking forward to seeing what you build.